The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of A Quiet Place, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this 2018 hit movie. And joining me today on the panel are Andrew Hermiz. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on our Facebook page, where you can follow us, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and leave comments and join the conversation. We love to see you there, and it's a great way of connecting with folks there. So, A Quiet Place, written, directed, starring John Krasinski, Jim from The Office. This came out in 2018. It was I was about to say it was a quiet hit, but
it works.
Yeah, it was a surprise hit, shall we say? And so much so that it spawned a sequel, A Quiet Place Part 2, which, as we're recording this, was supposed to be due out in this month, March of 2020. But because of the virus and all that sort of thing, it's been, like a lot of movies, been postponed to some unspecified later date this year, they hope. Things will be better by then. So we're going to be talking about an apocalyptic event where people are hunkering down in their homes, hiding from dangerous things that no one understands. So we're trying to take your mind off of the apocalyptic event that you're enduring right now, perhaps. So some of us are more hunkered down than others, I guess. So let's talk about this movie. You both have seen it. Did you guys see this in the theater or afterward? Tell me about how you saw it, Thomas.
I watched it on Netflix. It was just a Netflix watch for me, and it was my wife and I sat together in the living room, had the lights out, had the kids to bed, and it was a good watch.
Yeah. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, same thing. I watched it on Netflix, and I remember really wanting to see it in theaters, but for one reason or the other, I just never caught it. Because usually I like to see movies like that on the biggest, loudest screen.
Yes.
But yeah, like Thomas said, it was still a great experience watching it at home.
I'm not sure this would have made a difference for as far as loudest screens.
That's right.
It might have actually been really good because you're used to going to the movies and having the big loud experience.
Yeah,
and it would have been very eerie sitting there, not having any sound at all.
Yeah, that's true. I also saw it at home. I didn't want to see this movie for the longest time. I resisted. And because I don't like horror movies, I'm not a fan. I don't like the jump scare. It's just not my thing. But I like some movies that could be considered horror. Like I like the Aliens, and there are some of those sorts of movies. And my brother kept telling me, because he's not a horror movie fan, but he kept telling me, you really got to see this movie. No, you really got to see this movie. I don't want to tell you too much, but as a dad, you need to see this movie.
Right.
So let's talk a little about this. It's a movie about family, really.
Yeah, it really is. And that's like the closest I could equate it to another movie would be to Signs, where there's like a layer of story that just happens to have, a horror element to it. But the story is really about the family.
Right. And about these relationships between a dad, his children, the mom, the husband, the children. Yeah, and living out these roles. It's also a movie a little bit about deafness, not just a little. It's a lot about being deaf, living with death too, but deafness, where what's normally a weakness is also a strength in this movie. So the girl who is the daughter who's deaf, her deafness is presumably, we don't get a lot of backstory. We don't get any backstory really, but we presume that the fact that she was deaf, profoundly deaf, and that the family knows sign language is one of the reasons they are one of the few families to have survived this apocalyptic event.
It's definitely an advantage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's due to her deafness. That's kind of the assumption that you tend to make as a viewer. You're watching this and you're going, well, I mean, lucky for them that they had this situation that happened to prepare them in a deeper way for what happened.
Right. I mean, at first we're presented like her deafness it causes the initial situation. We'll get into it. We're going to be spoiling this discussion as we often do on this show. Just assume you've seen it. This is a sort of discussion where we're talking about the depths of the movie, and we can't do that without spoiling it. But the death of her brother, the girl's brother at the beginning, she kind of blames on herself for being deaf and not hearing him. So let's kind of set the stage. At the beginning of the movie, we see this family in an abandoned town in this abandoned pharmacy, I assume.
Right.
And they're moving very quietly, doing everything as quietly as possible, getting medicine for the older brother who's sick, and the younger brother, this boy who's probably 4, picks up a toy spaceship, and the dad very carefully takes it from him quietly and puts it back on the shelf. But then the sister gives it to the boy anyway, and he grabs batteries. And we know that this is a bad thing. I suppose if you're going into this movie not knowing what the premise is, you don't understand why that's a bad thing. But he eventually puts the batteries in, turns it on. But the way that the family is walking, he's at the back of the group. The dad's at the front. The mom is carrying the sick older brother. And between the little one and the rest of them is the deaf sister. And while the dad hears the toy and starts running, the sister who's closest can't hear it. So it's her deafness which prevents her from saving her brother from these creatures that hunt by sound and are extremely fast, who sadly, I mean, this movie starts with the death of the horrible death of the child.
Right.
So it starts off with this horrible, the fact that she's deaf is she blames, herself for why her brother dies, but it becomes the strength that saves them all and perhaps could save all of humanity by the end.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think his death, having that death too in the beginning of the movie, it really instills the terror of the reality of the world that they're living in. Because usually when you're watching a movie and you see the kids, you're like, oh, they're probably going to be safe. They're going to make it out alive. You always assume, oh, it's probably going to be one of the parents, and that does eventually happen. We'll get into that, but you would never think that.
The kids are always safe. Kids,
right,
we don't touch kids, right?
So right from the get go, it's setting the scene like this is the reality that they live in.
Yeah, and they made some very interesting decisions there too. Like they showed the creature, but in a very blurry and very quick way. And I like the decision they made there, because it's one of those things where if you show a creature like that too early, you end up having to let the audience deal with it. And that limits what you can do with the creature. Whereas with this one, they blurred it enough that they could leave it until later to really let you discover what it looked like.
It's the Spielberg rule, right? With Jaws, we know that it's there. We see it indistinctly or only partially, and it's only later that we get the full horror of it. Because if we see it too early, the horror of it sort of we become used to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that was a good choice. So this movie is mostly, as you'd expect from the title, silent. There is not a lot of dialogue. I mean, this was probably a pretty easy script to write,
right?
in one sense.
Well, in one sense, yeah. But then in the other, the turn of it is that then you have to convey all of the emotion. You have to convey all of the character development. Everything has to be conveyed with pure action and emotions from the actors,
right?
And you have 2 kid actors to deal with in that situation, which makes it even more complicated. Right.
Mm-hmm. And the director is one of the actors, so that's not easy to direct from in front of the camera while you're in the process as well. The family, I find it very interesting. Lee Abbott is the dad, Evelyn Abbott is the mom, the daughter is Regan, the older son is Marcus, the younger son is Bo, but their name is Abbott, which I've heard that some people will see in that some reference to like an abbey, like a religious family, like a religious community that's set apart from the world in the great silence of a monastery, and how great drama if you've ever seen the movie Into the Great Silence, I mean, you can see how the great drama of humanity can be carried out in the silence of a monastery, in that battle of good versus evil in the depths of the human soul. And that this is it might be stretching it a bit to apply that here, but what do you think of that idea? Yeah,
I read about that too, and I don't think it's a stretch because I also found out, I didn't know that this before, that John Krasinski is actually a devout Catholic.
Yep.
And I don't think, and the life that they live is very monastic. I mean, they live in silence. You see them pray at the table in silence, before meals. They're surrounded by books, so they're always doing, they kind of live a quiet, academic, thoughtful life. Yeah, exactly. And so I don't think it was. If I had to guess, it was probably not an accident that their last name was Abbott.
Yeah, well, and if it was an accident that was made by the writer, not unknowingly putting that same flair on it. Yeah, I think that you have a set of characters here that's very much removed from the world that they live in, and so much so that the way that the way that they're separated from each other by that silence, even though they live their whole lives together, they're completely removed from each other to the point where they don't even know the emotions that the others are going through. I thought that was a really interesting take on things, that even in that contemplative moment, you can get wrapped up too much in yourself and not the people that you're with and you're around. And I thought that was a great spin to put on their situation.
Yeah, I mean, in that silence, that none of them know, like the dad doesn't, in the silence, doesn't know the guilt that his daughter is carrying or his wife is carrying from the death of their son, Bo. And he doesn't know that, and his daughter doesn't know the guilt the dad carries. And, that's in so many families, and sometimes there is this, even though we're not being hunted, there is that lack of communication and so much lack of empathy and understanding of the burdens that others, even in our own families, carry, because there's a silence between us where we aren't talking about these things. They couldn't talk, but we can. I think there's a clear message that's coming through in this movie in that sense. That's why I love this. I say this is a family movie. This is a movie about family life. With the monsters on the edge of the picture.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a Stephen King principle too, right? Is you take regular characters and then you put them in a situation that is abnormal and you push them to their boundaries and see what comes up. And that's what makes a good story. I think that was his whole premise for Cujo, was just like, what can I do to break this person, and something that's completely out of their control is just this rabid dog. And that's the same kind of thing you have going on here, is that it's just a regular group of people, but they are being pushed to the outer limits of what they're capable of. And they have to rise above it, and they have to overcome it.
Yeah. One of the things that comes through in this is that there are basically two kinds of apocalyptic movies. There's the big one, like Armageddon, where the president has to stop the rock coming out of the sky, and a movie like this story with that would be like the president and these aliens or whatever these creatures are coming out from the earth or coming out of the space. We don't know what they are. And then there's what's that? Independence Day. Right. And then there's the other kind, which this falls into, which is the small apocalyptic movie that we don't know what caused the apocalypse. We don't know, how it all came to be where we are here. And we don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, but we know what's going on in this little place with these few people. And that's a very interesting sort of limitation that the writer and director put on themselves to tell this story. We don't know where these creatures came from. Are they aliens? Are they cryptids that were just discovered? Were they made in a lab? We don't know, but it doesn't really matter, does it?
Right.
From the very little research that I did preparing for this podcast, I remember there was a quote that from John Krasinski, and he says that he wants to subvert every expectation from every apocalyptic movie that you've ever seen. And he specifically said, like, I didn't want the speech that you got from the president, and he didn't want to make it this global threat, even though it is a global threat. He didn't want to make it make the movie to that scale. It's like all he wanted to convey is that there's no decisions to be made by the government. Everything just happens so fast, and it's either you survive or you don't. That's really all that needs to be said.
Which I thought was really interesting. Then going through and looking at the producers and realizing that Michael Bay was on the production crew for this. Like, I'm like, are
you sure? I don't think there weren't enough slow-mo shots.
No slow-mo shots and not enough explosions. There needed to be more explosions.
Well, the fireworks, I think, at the end was pretty much qualifies as the explosion.
That might have been his only contribution.
No, that was it. There you go.
I don't know if you guys had the same reaction, but as soon as we saw that the mom was pregnant, you both are dads as well. You both probably had the same thought I did, which is the least quiet thing in all of creation is a newborn baby. Like, how in the world can this happen? And yet they were welcoming this baby. There was joy in this, despite the danger.
It was so amazing. And then to see that and to see, I mean, it's life goes on, right? You don't and that's humanity. I think that's the core message of this movie, is that we will continue. Like we will make things work. And this family is such a great example of, like, it doesn't matter. It's there. You don't have an option here. You can't just stop and have everything go back to the way it was. You just have to deal with where you are and move forward. Right. And it was so beautiful in that, like, just they accepted the fact that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, and it also shows that it's not merely this is not like, I don't know. I stopped watching The Walking Dead like after season 4, but I know they're like on season 28. But it's not like, where it's just a matter of like, okay, it's another day and we got to survive. Her being pregnant and them obviously doing everything they can to have the baby and are willing and happy to bring a baby into this insane world that they're living in. It shows that, like, it's not just good enough to try and survive every day. Like, you have to have a reason to live, and you have to keep living, and your new normal, you just have to make things work, with what you got, but you can't, like you said, you can't stop. You
have to have hope, and nothing conveys hope more than a new baby. A baby on the way is the ultimate expression of hope in the world. That idea of new life. I mean, because they have to. They haven't stopped teaching the children. There's that scene where they're having the kids are in school and she's teaching them. Right. They haven't stopped looking to the future. They're not like you said, Andrew. They're not just surviving. They're living, and that's a big difference.
Although the baby coffin threw us, like, that was, my wife kept going, "Oh, the baby coffin! I can't do. Oh, the baby coffin." we are pregnant right now, so we're kind of like in that moment of, like, thinking about, like, okay, where's the baby going to be? We still got one in the crib. Kind of like, oh, the baby coffin really was.
Actually, I was wondering if they would be selling that at Babies R Us. I know, right? It's because it's silent and quiet, and you just put the baby inside. No.
No.
What are the, of course, being me, I can't help it. I look at the farm that they're on and I'm wondering, how did they plant all that corn silently? That seems when it snows, because they're quite obviously in a place that gets at least some snow.
Right.
How do they walk around in all that snow quietly?
They walk around in the snow. Yeah, that was a question. And then if you really, this is the only unraveling I'm going to do, but it's got to be done, right? Okay. I don't care how prepper you are. They were way over prepared for the situation that they were in, right? And because I'm very much like a readiness guy, right? And the knowledge base that they had, combined with living on this farm that was perfectly positioned, was very hard to buy. Like, that was a really hard sell in my opinion.
Let me throw it the other side to you, though, which is because I heard this from Stephen Sterling, who's an author who writes apocalyptic fiction. He wrote this great series of books called the Changeverse or Emberverse series, where 99% of humanity dies and 1% survive. And he talks about, like, the readers would object. How could your character have survived? That's so unlikely. He's like, yes, it is. That it's like winning the lottery twice. But if 99% of people die and 1% survive, every one of those people that survive would have had the most unlikely set of coincidences and circumstances. So, yeah, I suppose you could sell it like that, but you're right.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I was like, okay, so maybe he is a guy that was in the rat race and they decided to sell everything and go live on a farm, and and then this happened. Like, you know, so that was how I was like justifying it. It was like such a hard sell to try and get those things to match up with each other.
I know, same here. So one of the things that I kind of like was how Lee, the dad, he's trying to reconnect with his daughter by repairing the thing that he thinks, you know, caused her to have this to have her brother die. You know what I mean? Her deafness, and so he's working on that cochlear implant device, trying to fix it so she can hear. He thinks that this would help her. This is, you know, the way that will, and it's never spoken, but you get the idea, like. For her to survive, she needs to be able to hear the world around her when she can't rely on him anymore or other people. And so he's trying to make this device. And she's angry that he thinks that he can fix her and that he's overprotective of her. And so I mean, how often, like I've just got teenagers, like my daughters are just in the beginning teenager. So I get this whole like, the difference between the dad trying to protect and the child trying to push, you know, a little independence and then not communicating back and forth. So I could see that dynamic going on a little bit in there. And it's very interesting, even to the point where he decides to take his son to the river to catch fish instead of his daughter. What did you think? Why do you think he took the son instead of the daughter? Was it just being overprotective of her, or did he have another reason that he didn't say? I'm curious because I'm not quite sure I know why.
I think if they were a whole year on from the death by that point, you know, because it gives you a brief, like, here's the day number, and then it's like the next day number is like 300 and some odd days later or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that this was anything except for something out of the ordinary, that he was taking the boy instead of the wife. And I think that's where it might have gotten upsetting to the girl that he kind of skipped her. And so that's kind of the impression I got. We don't know. We don't have a lot of information about what went on there exactly. But, I think because the wife's pregnant and so they're dealing with that issue, and he's also trying to prep the kids for being able to live on their own and to make sure that they can take care of themselves and the rest of the family too if they need to. And so why he picked the son, I think it's just easier. I in that situation, I think that she was having problems with the implant, so it was harder for her to be able to go out and hear. And so he picked the one that he could easily teach how to do these things, so that if he needed to help around the house, that he could, and he could send him out and rely on him to do stuff. Right. So I don't know. I felt like it was very utilitarian. Like I didn't feel the complications of like an emotional, I need to fix her before she can do this or anything like that. Just straight up in that situation, it was a survival choice. Like, right. This is the easiest way for us to make this a survival issue. He was being the dad who sees it as utilitarian, and she's the daughter who sees it in an emotional or relational terms. Right. Yeah. Which then I think in my feeling, it led to that situation where they're at the river and the son's talking to him and says, hey, how she feels about this, and he seems surprised by the fact that there's like an emotion behind the guilt right about it, because he's been bearing all the guilt about it, and he feels like it's his fault that this whole thing happened. So and I think that was one of the things that was really beautiful, is that they were all independently bearing some weight from that situation, and if they had been able to share the load more, it would have been better for all of them. In one sense, the quiet place is that place of guilt where no one spoke it out loud and no one shared it with one another. Right. That's the quiet place in a metaphorical sense. Andrew, what do you think of that central carrying of guilt that they have, and this moment at the river where the son reveals this to him?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the guilt being the quiet place, and I feel like the going back to why he took the son, I kind of felt the same way. It was like, okay, if he needs to be the man of the house one day, he needs to learn these skills and carry on, and I feel like in the movie it was intentional that obviously the girl, because of her brother, the circumstances of her brother's death, and how she just was emotionally, I think it was intentional that she was the black sheep of the family,
right?
And that, so in the end, when we see the payoff of him fixing, the device, and that being her being like the reason why they survive, and that device playing, a pivotal role, being like the superhero weapon of this of this story, essentially. I think it helps that scene excuse me, it helps that scene in the end pay off more, right, because she's in this state this whole time, and at the end it just goes full circle.
When she runs off while the dad and her brother at the river, she packs her backpack and runs off, and she goes to her brother's memorial at the place where he died. Is she running away? Is she leaving? Or is she just like, I need to get out of this house for a little while and I'm going to go to that place? Did you get a sense of that? I couldn't figure out whether she was running away or just, I need to get away for a little bit.
I don't know that she knew. And I think that was, that was such a well done event, because we didn't know. And I think you very clearly felt her sense of not belonging at all. And, she didn't have anywhere to go. There's nowhere she could go to where she would be better off than where she was.
Right.
But at the same time, she didn't feel like she was really, like she belonged where she was. And so that whole scene was great. Her whole set of scenes there was just aimless. And you really got this sense of her not having a purpose. And then when everything does come full circle at the end, she has that aha moment of like, oh, I do have a purpose.
Right.
And so for her, it was just not knowing how she fit into everything. And we get that feeling just walking through her shoes during that moment.
This is right around the time where the brother Marcus tells the dad at the river, you need to tell her you love her. And he says, she knows I love her. And he's like, does she? Have you told her? There's this moment where, hey, guys, you have to actually say the words. That's sort of stereotypical. You have to tell them that you have to actually say the words that you love them. You can't just show them by the things you do. And so often as guys, to use some generalities here, guys, we often express love through the things we do for others, for the ones we love. Whereas sometimes they really just need us to say it. Just say the words, and that's felt like such a true moment in this movie. Like there are many of these true moments, and that felt like a true moment. Apart from the science fiction horror stuff, that was a true moment of that. You could see the dad going, oh, sort of that. Right. Oh, yeah. I guess, yeah. Then we have this is where we get into the heart of the action of the movie from this point, where on the way back to the farm, Lee and his son Marcus, they encounter this old man who's standing over the corpse of his wife, who has been killed by one of these creatures, and the old man has lost it. I mean, he has lost the will to live. He's lost his desire to put up with this, and he commits suicide by alien creature or whatever by yelling, and which is a nice foreshadowing of what's going to come later. This is a yelling out of despair, and later on Lee will yell out of love, in a sense, right. Self-sacrificial love. So they have to run. And meanwhile, Evelyn, the mom, is back at the house alone, where of course she goes into labor alone. And then, okay, this is the toughest thing in the movie to watch. Watching the son get killed was hard. But watching her step on the exposed nail and not yell. Oh my.
That was crazy.
Oh, I was cringing. And she's incredibly strong to not scream at this point. Like this, you see the incredible strength she has to do this, and then to go into labor in a bathtub by herself, holding it all in, while the creature is like in the house. It's in the house with you. You know, the classic horror movie line. It's just that whole scene is just incredible. That strength that any great family has is the strength is not just one of the parents or the other parent, but both in their unique ways working together for the family as that backbone of the family together. So I just loved seeing that. I mean, I hated seeing it in one sense because it looked so horrible, but I love seeing it.
She's an incredibly strong woman, and the character is just an amazing example. And the fact that going back to that hope, that sense of hope of when you find out that you're pregnant, and to override that dread and go, okay, now what do we do? How do we make this work? And to come up with the decisions and the solutions that they came up with is incredible, because you're in the middle of all of this having to be silent, and you're going into a store and like your kid's picking up a toy that you very quietly grab and take the batteries of and put to the side because we're not going to, and now we have to go out and collect fireworks. Right. And like just that the dichotomy of those two things is really interesting.
And the setting up the lights system, because they know the creatures are blind. They're absolutely, they have no vision at all. Yet they can hear the slightest sound, usually, which we'll get to. They can hear the slightest sound. So they have a visual alarm system of lights. And when the lights are white, everything's good. When they turn red alert. You know, I was curious about the sand and the bare feet everywhere. I guess walking on sand in your bare feet doesn't make as much noise, I guess.
Well, if you think about twigs and leaves and things falling, so if you just take a bag of sand with you and scatter it over everything, you're not going to break twigs, you're not going to crunch leaves.
That's true.
And so that they had those paths. So there were lots of paths everywhere that they had. If they needed to go a particular place, there was a path that they had carved out with the sand.
Right. And when it rains, you replenish it, I guess.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the creatures, they learn to like just ignore like sounds of nature.
Yeah.
So maybe they, if they just hear a little crackle here or there, they might just brush it off.
Tree branches or that sort of thing. Although apparently all the creatures are dead. There's no birds. There's no small. We see the raccoons get eaten, taken by the creature. Right. I want to go back to Evelyn giving birth in the tub because Lee comes, finds her there. He sent, or I forget the chain of events.
He finds her in the shower, right? Because she moved.
And he sends no. I'm sorry. Before that, the creature's coming up the stairs. Lee has sent Marcus to go set off the diversion of the fireworks. And she holds it in, and the creature's like right outside the door, and she holds it in as long as she can, and then she finally just screams in labor as the fireworks go off to mask her sound. In that sense, the fireworks sends the creature off, running. And I think maybe it was Bishop Barron who compared this to the vision of Revelations 12. Where the woman clothed with the sun who gives birth as the dragon waits to devour her son. Mary, the woman clothed with the sun. And that's what we're seeing here, essentially, is this dragonish creature waiting to devour her and her son as she gives birth. I thought that was kind of a fascinating comparison. So, and that's awesome. When Lee finds her in the tub or in the shower in the bathroom with the newborn. And has all new appreciation for his wife's strength.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then he takes them to the soundproof basement in the barn, I guess that they soundproofed. Then the baby goes into the soundproof crib with the oxygen mask, which I thought was a fascinating thing. I think maybe to keep them from crying or something, I guess, or maybe just to have because the crib could be so airtight, I guess.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to make it mostly airtight for the sound to stay in.
Yeah. So she falls asleep, but wakes to find the creature tears everything up above, which in the process breaks a water pipe, I guess. And that starts flooding the basement. And the baby's now exposed, floating around. And the creature is down there with them in the water.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why can't the creature hear their heartbeats or her slight movement as she's moving through the water if this thing can hear so well? But, whatever. You gotta have a movie. You can't, have everything. then we have the scene Marcus in the cornfield knocks himself out. I thought that was actually kind of amusing, where he's like running headlong and bang right into the tire. Poor kid.
Yep, completely accurate though, because I've had my kids do that.
Running headlong,
right?
Yes, yeah. And that's when his sister she's seen the fireworks from the memorial on the bridge and come back, and that's where she sees the flashlight shining, the light shining from where her brother had run into the corn. She finds the brother, and the alien comes, or whatever it is, the creature, let's call it the creature. I kind of assume that they're aliens, but whatever it is. The creature comes, and as it gets close to her cochlear implant has feedback that causes it pain and causes it to run away. So our first hint that there's something going on. She doesn't notice it at all. She doesn't see it at all. But then they go to hide in the grain silo, or on top of the grain silo, where they burn a flare or something, like a signal, right?
Right. Which seems to be a common thing. Like they were communicating with other people who had survived by burning those things. And I thought that was a really interesting, like, isolation. They were all very isolated, but they all must have these paths that go in and out of the town. So they probably know still where each other live and do communicate with each other to some extent or another. But I mean, you can't, what are you going to do? Get together and have a party?
Right. My guess is
be so quiet.
They light these signals on a regular basis to let the others know that we're still here, that we're still alive. That's pretty much, and to be reassured that others are alive as well. A little bit like the beacon fires of Gondor,
Exactly.
Send the signal. So Regan and Marcus, they go up there and they have an argument, right? And then Marcus steps on the hatch and falls through into the silo. And that's when the alien comes in. They're drowning in the grain, which is actually really accurate. But people have died drowning in grain silos. There's no purchase in it. It's like quicksand. So that's was kind of scary. The alien comes, and once again, her cochlear implant feedback drives it away. And they run. Meanwhile, Dad is coming. Lee is coming to save them, and they hide in this truck in the field. And the dad comes, sees the creature on top of the truck, and decides that he's going to save them. He signs to her, "I've always loved you." And interesting thing, Millicent Simmons, who plays Regan, she's actually deaf. She'd asked John Krasinski to change the sign from just "I love you" to "I've always loved you," because she felt that was a more profound emotional moment.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because I mean, it's not just "I love you." That's almost a banal. We could just "I love you." Just really easy to say. But "I've always loved you." I've never stopped loving you. It's essentially, I never blamed you.
Right.
Wow, what a powerful moment.
Yeah, it's that moment of forgiveness, and really exactly what she needed to close the situation that they were having. Right. Throughout the entirety of the movie.
Exactly. I think that ending was one of my favorite parts of the movie is the ending, and I feel like they nailed it. It's very hard for a lot of horror movies and thrillers to end well, but even though you kind of like can predict, like, oh, probably the dad's gonna die, or one of the parents are gonna die, as what usually happens in these things. As long as you can pay it off in a powerful way. And the way that they did, it really, like I mentioned before, the fact that she goes from being this girl that's full of guilt and is like the black sheep of the family to being the hero, it just it really it elevated the film, to another level. They could have easily gone the route of like, well, he just saves them and he sacrifices himself, and he's the reason why they survived. But the fact that she played a role in that, I think was a wise choice. It's
a classic superhero story, isn't it? Where it's the self-sacrifice of a parent or parent figure, Uncle Ben for Peter Parker, Batman's mom and dad, the Waynes, Superman's parents, their self-sacrifice is something that propels that hero to become the hero. And that you can assume, maybe in A Quiet Place too, that it comes out even more, where she becomes that hero because of his sacrifice. Bishop Robert Barron, again, something else he said about this movie, because he really liked it too. He said when Lee screams to attract the creatures to himself, knowing that they will kill him in order to save his children, he said that's like Christus Victor. Jesus Christ drew the dark powers to himself in a self-sacrificial way, and by doing so, liberates those who are in danger. And that's the message of the cross, of Easter and Good Friday. And that's something we see here that Lee does. I think it's something that a father does for his children, in this case, the elder brother did for his siblings, us. And so I really love that image of that fatherly self-sacrifice. And so we have a father who sacrificed for his family, but he sacrifices his life. But we also have a mother who sacrifices everything else for them as well. So there's a lot of, like, her sacrifice is no less, especially since without a father, they need her now. Like, she can't give her life for them. She'll give everything else. Yeah,
in an interview I read, John Krasinski, I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but John Krasinski and Emily Blunt are real life husband and wife.
Right.
And so that fact, I think, helps really help their chemistry, obviously, naturally. And he said what he really thought about while developing this film was, he thought about, like, well, they had just had their second child. The theme that kept ringing in his head is, like, I'm thinking about what I would do for my family in this situation. Like, how much would I sacrifice? How much would I be willing to do? He and Emily. I think that really helped the film find its emotional core. And the fact that it was a real life mother and father in the film, I think that helped it carry its weight.
Well, and then that scene is so fantastically acted. You don't think a scream is very hard to do, but there's so many different ways to ruin that moment with the wrong emotion, with the wrong expression, with the wrong kind of scream even. And he just nailed it. Like, it was pitch perfect to that moment. And, I went back and watched it again, and, like, just everything about it, like the emotion that he's conveying, the sense of absolute dread about what's going to happen, but complete understanding that that's what has to happen in order to save his kids. He gets it all in there, and it was really so powerful. And it could have been a complete failure, but they got it perfectly, and it really looks fantastic as it comes out in the movie.
Not to overdo the metaphor a little, but it reminds me a lot of the emotion that Jim Caviezel showed in The Passion of the Christ. Another movie which we're going to be talking about actually in Secrets of Movies and TV Shows very soon. But or we might have already, depending on when this comes out. But in that movie, he there's that moment of Christ giving his life over. Giving up, as they used to say, giving up the ghost, giving up his spirit. And it's a similar thing, that profound from the depths, that yell, that primeval sense of both loss, defiance of evil, strength even in that moment. Yeah, you're right. It was perfect the way he portrayed that. So the movie does end with Evelyn and the three kids in the house's basement with the creatures coming, and Regan has realized that her implant hurts the creatures, makes them vulnerable. So she uses a microphone and speaker that are there that her dad, had set up because he's been on the shortwave trying to contact people, to amplify it, which causes it to expose a weak spot. You kind of wish the army had figured this out long ago when they were shooting at these creatures who couldn't be hurt by bullets. But that lets Evelyn blast it with a shotgun. And the movie ends with two more creatures, showing up on the closed circuit video cameras, running toward the house, approaching the house. You kind of get the idea that, I think she even cocks the shotgun, racks another round in there, ready to go.
And turns around and looks at Regan and says, like, almost like you ready, right?
Yeah.
There's like this tacit nod Very Aliens moment there.
Yeah. And that they're, you get the idea. They're going to survive this encounter.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen. A few things about, in kind of say in general, Evelyn's a doctor. Remember, I don't think we mentioned that. Like the character's a doctor. She wants her kids to be fully formed, fully thinking people. We see her teaching them. Lee is an engineer, who wants to get his family through each day. He's very, again, we mentioned before, he's kind of utilitarian in that sense. He wants to give them what they need, equip them to survive, and to be taken care of. The monster, meanwhile, I'm very careful about metaphors and allegories and things like that, but bear with me for a second. It could represent all that in the world that we're afraid will tear us away from each other, our family, and even kill the members of our family. The answer to that monster is a quiet determination, to return to a simplicity to a life focused on the members of our family. It's not just shutting out the world, but shutting out that part of the world that endangers us. So we have to care for each other. Frankly, in the current climate, that's probably a relevant message for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
So this is a movie that says a lot about family, as I said before. I mean, we're left with questions. What's going to happen to this woman who doesn't have her husband now and her children, including a newborn? Won't the birth of this child be the death of this family? And
right.
How often does that even come up, even without cryptid creatures who kill everybody? Oh, if you have two kids and you're having another child, won't that be a burden too much for this family to bear? How do you
just
manage it?
Another child after having lost one so tragically? That's always something that people come back with, like, oh, this is not going to be healthy for you. You're going to have troubles dealing with things. So
yeah, I mean, it's so often it's if you have another child, you have a bigger family. Say goodbye to a normal life. Say goodbye to your wife. Say goodbye to your husband. But they don't fall for that message. They just prepare as best they can and live in hope. And that's I think if A Quiet Place has a message, I think that's the message. Prepare as best you can, live in hope, love the ones you're with.
Keep moving forward.
Anything else you guys want to say about this the movie that we didn't cover?
I liked how quiet it was. Honestly, like they did such a good job. I think without that scene at the river, you could have had a movie that really fell flat. But having that one moment where there was noise and there was an ability for them to talk to each other, a moment of real, like, true tenderness in the middle of that kind of harsh reality. That was such a great scene that just really pulled everything together from the rest of the movie in such a good way, because it was just even the colors, even the palette for that whole scene is very different, because it's all very brown, very dark and dim, except for that one scene where it's very bright and vibrant green, and same area, but the way that they shot it and the setting were very different. And I loved the cinematography was fantastic throughout the whole thing. It
relieved the tension a lot, that scene.
Right.
It kind of let up the tension a little bit so you could breathe a bit. And I think that the movie really needed a breather at that point, which was good. You're right. Yeah,
because you hit the ground running. I mean, one of the first things that happens is the death of the kid, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I in for here? And it just keeps like the tension just stays high that whole time until you get to that one scene.
Right. It's quiet and the creatures are ever present on the edges of that screen. You're just waiting for them to show up, and it's very tense. Yeah. Yeah. Andrew, how about you? Any last thoughts about this movie?
Yeah, I mean, again, talking about the tension, the tension of the film is biggest strength, because I liked when I watch a movie. Well, I like movies for many different reasons, but a movie like this, I just want to be sweating, and I want to be worried. Even though you don't like feeling like that, I want to be worried. I want to just be at the edge of my seat, and I want my heart pounding. And I think John Krasinski, I mean, I think this was his first feature, at least his first big feature. I thought it was a revelation. I mean, before this, he was the guy from The Office, right? So to see that he had the directing chops and the acting chops, because, you know, even before this, he's just really known for his comedy, was really impressive. And you see like the influences from Spielberg and Hitchcock. And, you know, one thing I appreciate about the movie, the way it builds tension, is that there's not one way to defeat this creature. It's like, well, if you made a sound, okay, well, you made a sound. If I run, they can catch me. If I stay still, they'll catch me. It's like that, like, WTF moment. Like, okay, like now I really have to like really think about what I'm gonna do in this situation. And they were always constantly, you know, battling with that. And then obviously the pregnancy scene was just on another level, you know, of that, just layers and layers of tension and how are they going to get out of this? And to constantly be in that mode, as much sweat and effort it takes to get through a movie like that, you know, the payoff at the end really is what hits it home. And at first I didn't like the ending, the very end where, you know, she cocks the shotgun and it's like, now it's going to be a franchise. Like, we're going to see her on her little adventures with her children, and they're going to do this Walking Dead sort of thing where they're just out there, you know, shooting the creatures. But after, you know, watching it again and thinking about, and now that the sequel's out, it's getting really, really good reviews. So I'm looking forward to it whenever it comes out. I know, and I know it's gotten delayed, but I cannot wait to see the sequel, and I'm pumped to see, you know, how they could even manage to top this one. Yeah,
I have to say, John Krasinski has become one of my favorite actors out there right now. I mean, between A Quiet Place, 13 Hours, the Jack Ryan series, it's not just that I like his acting. I like the projects he's doing. I like the kind of movies and shows that he's making and the things that they say and the values they embody. I mean, they're not perfect, obviously. It's Hollywood, you know, that's the way it is. But I really feel like that they have something to say that's worthwhile and embody a certain outlook on life, on the world, on family, on those sorts of things that I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to the whatever else he's got coming in the future. Apparently he has said that he has ideas for Quiet Place 3. I hope they don't overdo it. Like some things are best done the way, you know, and be done with it, you know, but
do it one story, done. Get the story done.
There's going to be a Quiet Place spin-off, you know. It's like, hey man, there was that guy, we saw that guy in the woods, so we know there's others out there. So
a quieter place. A not so quiet place. All right. I think that's a good place that we should wrap things up there. I notice I did call it the good place once in this episode. I was very afraid of doing that because we just did Secrets of the Good Place episode. So as we wrap things up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Movies and TV shows, including Stephen B., Irving N., Jacob J., Jacqueline B., and Jeffrey L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Movies and TV shows and all the shows we do at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And please do go to sqpn.com and check out all the shows we have. We have a lot of very good shows that you might enjoy if you enjoy this. So that's it from us. What did you think of A Quiet Place? We'd love to hear what you think by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or on the StarQuest Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or you can send an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of A Quiet Place.
It's been great.
Andrew Hermiz, thank you as well.
Thanks for having me.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV shows on StarQuest.